A call to order the regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Phyllis, you want to do roll call?
Chairperson Bob McCool.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Lisa Ritchie. Commissioners Phyllis Sarden here. Jerry Melia.
Here.
Jason Reese.
Here.
Anthony Stewart.
Here.
Steve Woody.
Here.
Planner Stephen Williams.
Here.
Attorney Dan Hardy.
Here.
I don't know if we have any public here, but this is time for public comment if you want to speak on anything related to, no, we don't have a consent agenda, but non-agenda items. Looking not, so we can go straight into agenda item 3, adoption of a resolution approving the service plan for the Lanterns Rock Creek Metropolitan District. Stephen, do you have anything?
I do not, but Assistant Manager Martin Toth is here to provide a quick overview.
Good evening, all. Thanks. Martin Toth, Town Staff. The agenda item that's in your packet for tonight is summarized in the cover memo, but as a quick recap, Planning Commission approved earlier this month on the July 3rd meeting a recommendation for a PD amendment, final plat site plan for a 62-unit duplex project on the Anderson property. Tonight's agenda is a little bit of a follow-up. It's a resolution for one of the elements of that application. This is the consideration of the Metropolitan District Service Plan, which would be used to help finance the installation of the public improvements to serve the development project area. Unfortunately, it wasn't on the Planning Commission's agenda during that July 3rd meeting as we were working through some of the details in the plan. The service plan will be included in the town board's public hearing items that are scheduled for next Monday night, the 23rd. So before a representative from the applicant's team comes up and talks about the specifics and answers some questions, staff wanted to briefly introduce the item since it's part of the town's overall development review process. So working with Town Planner Williams and all of our development review team, we expand a little bit when it comes to service plans and include some additional legal review and finance team review as part of our overall development review process. So there's some very specific criteria that are included in the town's municipal code that relate to how a metropolitan service plan for a metropolitan district is reviewed by the Planning Commission and the Town Board. So we've had a chance to finish that process. And over the last few months, we've been able to work through the legal and finance team's issues and questions to complete this review and ensure it meets to the ordinance standards, and it's now ready for the Planning Commission to review and then to potentially recommend for the Town Board to consider through the public hearing on next Monday night, the 23rd. So there's just a couple of items that staff wanted to highlight, and then we'll turn it over to members of the Boulder Creek Neighborhoods team to answer any questions and talk about some of the specific details in their service plan. The district would be used just to finance the construction of public improvements that are intended to be dedicated to the town. The $2.3 million in bonds would be used to build these improvements and then be paid back through a maximum of a $25 million property tax levy for the residents and the property owners within just that project area. Once the work is completed, the intent is for the district to dissolve and not be used to provide any ongoing maintenance. The project will include the creation of an HOA, which would maintain the lots and the structures there like Boulder Creek Neighborhoods firm does now. You're all familiar with the Calmonte project at the corner of McCaslin and Colton. It'd be the same kind of format, the low maintenance type of structures and then low maintenance kind of operating plan that the firm uses would be applied in this development as well. For Planning Commission's reference, districts like these number in the thousands across the state, and they're commonly used for development projects like this. As an example that the Commission is familiar with, the Rock Creek neighborhoods here in Superior were developed a couple of decades ago using metropolitan districts to help finance the improvements there as well. I'd also note that the debt associated with this project is separately financed and wouldn't be able to ever come back as a liability for the town to take on. It's completely within the boundaries of the district itself. And also that the district wouldn't be controlled by the town, but by the property owners within that district area. So conversely, the district wouldn't be able to control anything that's under the town's purview. So any land use decisions, zoning, building heights, anything like that wouldn't be controlled by the district. So with a little bit of background on that, I'll introduce a couple of members of the development team to talk a little bit about the specifics of their project and then answer questions from the Commission. We have Sean Allen, the attorney for the developer project, and also Michael Cooper from Boulder Creek Neighborhoods are here.
Good evening. Sean Allen, legal counsel on behalf of the applicant for tonight's service plan. Essentially, I want to keep this brief for you, but the service plan that we have submitted to the town does conform with the code requirements for the town of Superior. And that's really one of the key reviews for the Planning Commission tonight is, do we conform to your code? And we have structured our service plan so that all the limitations that are contained in your code, we are not seeking to go beyond those. You have a very strict 25 mill levy on the debt side. We have conformed to that, also limiting debt to 25 years in maturity. We have conformed to that as well. We have a stated debt limit so that we cannot go beyond that, and if we would, that would be considered a material modification to the service plan. We would have to come back to the town first and give reasons why we need additional debt limit if things had changed, and then the town would have an ability to say yes or no in a public hearing, as well as any residents that are have moved in since then. They would have an opportunity to come up and be either in support or that. So there's plenty of opportunities for the district to come back to the town if we feel that the limitations that are placed on the district no longer work or need to be massaged through for different reasons that may come up. It's not that we can do it. We must come back to the town for those. So that's a good provision that we always have to come back for material modifications if we have any. As Martin indicated, that there's no liability of the town. This would be district debt. It would be paid from the taxable property within the district itself. It wouldn't go on the town's debt levy, the town's debt load. It would be for this particular project in and of itself. We have added an additional provision in the service plan, a disclosure. It's one of the exhibits, and that is going to be a recorded document, and it will further inform the residents that there is a district, why it was formed, the amount of mill levy, any fees if districts do have fee power. We don't anticipate any, but it's a recorded disclosure. That goes beyond what you would normally get by statute, which is when you go to a closing, hundreds of pages, and there's one paragraph in there, all caps, that you may be within one or more taxing districts, and that's really all the notice that you would be required to have. And so we've gone above and beyond that and added this additional exhibit and this additional recording to give the residents further notice of this is what it is, this is what you're buying. And so if they do their due diligence, they have greater opportunities, and we've added that in as additional protection for the residents as well. As terms of why are we doing this? What's the purpose behind this district? Why is it important to the developer? I'm going to bring up Mr. Cooper here so he can give some of those details in terms of, okay, we've got this financing tool, and this is why we need it, and this is what we'll be using it for. So Mr. Cooper would like to come up, and I'll remain up here and any questions that you may have during his presentation as well.
Thank you, Sean. Mike Cooper with Boulder Creek Neighborhoods. I believe we were in front of you a couple weeks ago. Metro districts, we've formed about four or five metro districts for Boulder Creek on various projects. A number of projects that we've built have already had metro districts in the master development. So it's a very common tool to help finance public infrastructure for neighborhoods, one that we commonly use and is common across the state of Colorado. It's important on this project and other projects. For a number of reasons. It's a tool to help keep the cost of housing down. It helps to keep, make a lot of projects just financially viable. If you look at Stapleton, downtown Superior, Rock Creek, none of those projects would have been possible likely without a metropolitan district. So it does just generally help get more projects out there, more housing, which increases the supply and can help to keep costs down. The other thing is our product is very unique in terms of its horizontal nature. So we build at a premium to other typical neighborhood builders. For example, we don't build, since we're one-level homes primarily, we don't build as much square foot per acre. We don't get as many units per acre. Therefore, we're kind of at a competitive disadvantage to other traditional neighborhoods. So this is a tool to help finance the development and bring this type of active adult product to the market. So it helps just the viability of get this type of housing out there. So in general, the 25 mill levy is about half of what we typically do for a metropolitan district. A 50 mill levy is very typical. So we've limited it to that per the town code. So yeah, we're excited. We're excited to look forward to any comments you might have, and Sean and I will be here to answer them. Thank you.
Is that all? Any questions? And this is a little new to me, so the ballot, there's a ballot component to this? It's in here, can you?
Yes, there is a ballot component. The districts do require Tabor authorization
Yeah.
to impose their mill levy, to issue debt. And so there's a full ballot in terms of, shall the district be organized, who are the initial directors, street power, sewer power, in terms of being able to pose a tax and issue debt, and the debt's repaid from that tax. So yes, that is a.
Okay, and who will, that's not to the town, that's to the,
That will be, that will be to the current eligible voters of the district. And when you form a brand-new district on vacant ground.
who are we talking about? Yeah.
It is the only people that can be are the representatives of the
Okay.
developer, and that's how you form all metro districts
Okay,
when it's
cool.
vacant
All
ground,
right,
so.
just didn't understand, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
I have one question. We talked about the criteria. You said that you went through and made sure that that we're meeting all the criteria that the town has set up. Is this an appropriate time to ask, have we, as the staff, looked at that and confirmed that they're meeting all the criteria?
I'll let you answer that.
Well, sure. So the criteria in the code is under Article 1. It's part of Chapter 3. And it gives kind of an overview of the different limitations and requirements, including, as they pointed out, the 25 mil levy and things along those lines. So in your review, you would look at whether this service plan is in compliance with those limitations. For, I think 3150 is actually what kind of lays out a lot of the service plan limitations. I did take a look through them, to double check as well. And as far as I can tell, it looks like it's in compliance with the code provisions. But that would certainly be up to your review and for this matter. So.
And in furtherance of that, we also work closely with your special counsel, your outside counsel, and Kendra, she made sure that we complied with, as we were drafting the service plan and back and forth with her, that we maintained our integrity with the code as well.
Thank you.
Anthony?
Would this be combined with any other tools that are available to you? Meaning, is there an agreement with Town of Superior where we may have to inject funding into this project in regards to the mill levy and additional costs that would be associated with it?
That would be extremely atypical if there was any arrangement like that, so I would look to the developer applicant and assume that they are not seeking any sort of town's augmentation for financing. This is a standalone. It would be what the district can afford within the service plan box that the town has by its code. Any amounts that the district says, well, we can only afford this much, your public infrastructure trust was this much, that's the big gap. That becomes developer contribution. So the developer has to say, well, I got this much of the funding for my district, and that was the capacity. Then it's out of the developer's financing that they would secure independently, not back to the district, not to the town, that they would have to make sure that they have the complete financial package that they need. So the town would not be asked to open its pocketbook, if you will.
Thank you. And kind of a follow-up, does the town receive any compensation or any dedicated land or street usage or anything like that from?
That would be a development specific, not a
I can
service
answer
plan
that.
for financing, so I would defer to staff.
I can answer that. So the public improvements are public improvements within the right of way. It is public improvements for water and sewer utilities, all that stuff that's getting built and financed through this agreement does come to the town and is dedicated to the town once those improvements are installed, and then there's a warranty period, and then, inspections, warranty period, all that stuff eventually gets dedicated to the town. Those right-of-ways will be public right-of-ways. Those, the water and sewer will be, and stormwater will all be public infrastructure, so.
Thank you, that's all I.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion or a question?
I've got one more question.
Yeah, you bet.
So if the project starts, and let's say you run into, you've got the financing, you've got developer contribution, let's say it gets out of control and all of a sudden it's another $5 million, and we don't agree, you come back and we don't agree to that, what happens to the project, like, if it just gets stopped in the middle of it because you run out? What happens to the
In
project?
terms of the Metro District and its impact
Yeah.
on the residents,
Yeah.
the residents are protected by your 25 mil debt service cap. So if one house gets built or all 62 get built, it's 25 mils for the debt service cap. We cannot say, well, we needed more mill levy because not enough homes were built. The district could come back to the town and say, we need more, and you would be able to say yes or no to that. But as is, without coming back seeking a modification, that's what protects the residents. It's 25 mils whether I have one house or 1,000 homes built. That's the uniform of mill levy across the board of the
Do you have
district.
to complete the infrastructure improvements that are planned? So if you've got 62 and you've got 5 streets in there, can you just finish one and leave the other 3 kind of partially done?
The district is a financing tool, so in terms of your development requirements and your development plan requirements with the owner and the developer, that would be the town's link there. The district stands back and says, we're paying for what you build, and we don't have a say in we stop or we don't stop. That would be between, you still have that process and that link and tied to the developer.
Very good, thank you.
Mhm.
I had a follow-up question on the financing side of things. One of you had mentioned that typically your communities, Boulder Creek communities, are at a 50 mil level, and that the town of Superior has restricted that to 25 mils. So that seems like an awfully large gap to begin with, right out of the gate. So what we were just discussing of coming back to the town in the future saying we haven't collected enough money, we need to increase the mill levy, that's increasing the taxes on those residents that are moving into that Lantern Lane area. And so in essence, you're asking us to approve increasing taxes on future residents down the road, possibly.
No, what the plan that's in front is based on the current estimate of costs. So it would take something that, we have new estimate, the town's required something new or more, rather than we under budgeted. It would be
Under-budgeted
more
for
of
it.
something new has come up. There's additional requirements put on this project, and therefore all of our financial planning, excuse me, now needs to be reworked and reconsidered based on some new requirements that are coming in that we have to. Otherwise, if things happen under this district as issued, 62 units, our estimated values and so forth, we know going in, this is the capacity of your district based on what you're currently required in terms of the level of infrastructure needed for this project as being approved and considered, tonight and next week as well. So it's not we just, a year or so later, we come back and say, let's take another bite at the apple for no reason.
Right,
It would be,
right.
There's been a new apple being presented to us, most likely from additional requirements by the town, if you will.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I do have one more
Mm-hmm.
question, sorry. And this is probably for Mr. Cooper as well, but just wanted to know how closely will our Public Works Department and the people that are responsible for our infrastructure and all of our public utilities be involved in the Metro District?
The only way that the Public Works would be involved is through the inspection of the public facilities. So all of the funds will be used for public improvements. So just insofar as the town is involved in inspecting the roads, the storm sewer, water and sewer lines, they would be involved in that aspect of it. So really it'd be developed no different than any other project. It's just that the financing is used to fund that infrastructure would be from bonds from the Metro District.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, thank you, that answered that question.
Any other questions? Any concerns? Any discussion? Okay. So for us, it's just a recommendation?
Correct.
Okay. I entertain a motion. Anybody want to take a shot at it? No, it's actually right here and here. I guess I could make it slow. But maybe I'll take a shot at it.
Town of Superior Planning Commission, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution approving the service plan for the Lanterns Rock Creek Metropolitan District. Town of Superior Planning Commission Resolution Number PC-7, Series 18. It's a resolution of the Planning Commission of the Town of Superior recommending approval of the service plan for the Lanterns Rock Creek Metropolitan District.
Okay. Is that a motion, Chair Matt?
I'll second.
Second. All right, all in favor? Okay, unanimous? Okay, thank you. All right.
Save your card.
Yeah. Thought I haven't gotten our car fixed yet. Is there any staff announcements before we move on to the work session?
Yeah, quickly, and the reminder was sent out via email today too, but we do have a work session scheduled next Monday at 5:30 with the town board to go over the Toll Brothers concept plan. And that is for 34 acres in the southeast corner of downtown Superior. So it's the residential area south of Street 5, which is now named Central Park Avenue, or Central Parkway, excuse me. And then next week on Tuesday, we have our follow-up on Original Town. We're meeting here at 5 p.m., a little before 5 to start the walking tour. And then at 6 p.m., we'll start our kind of breakout discussion, focused entirely on Original Town. So those are just the two reminders, but otherwise, no updates.
And you mailed notices out? That was done today?
We mailed notices out yesterday and
Yesterday,
also
okay.
posted signs yesterday.
Yeah, I saw the
so,
signs.
Yep.
Good, yep. Okay.
Let me know if you don't get a notice.
What's that? Yeah, no, we got ours.
It should get there though. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We moved it out a little bit so better visibility, but yes, it's there. All right, let's see. So if that's all, any questions for staff before I adjourn this and move into the work session? No. Okay. All right, so this meeting, regular meeting is adjourned, and I guess a call to order a work session of the Planning Commission for discussion regarding the Northwest Sub-Area Plan. Stephen, do you have any introduction or?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually get to ask Sung and Cheney whether or not
Thank you, Dan.
they had a particular order they wanted to go in tonight, or if you guys, right now it's listed as we'd talk about the schedule for next week first, and then we'd go into the traffic. Okay. Well, then we'll let Sung start with a kind of overview of the format for next Tuesday's meeting.
Okay.
And it's the Word document, if
Yeah.
you want to pull that one up.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks,
here.
Dan.
Cool. Thanks.
And just so you're aware, I know I have to leave around 8, possibly 8:15 at the latest. Phyllis is having to
Okay.
get out, but I'm not sure how long the presentation is, but just.
Oh, no, it's
awareness.
brief. Sung Han, Clarion Associates. So you should all have the agenda or gotten the agenda beforehand. So I could run through it real quick, and if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to provide me those if you think that works. Let me get my pen real quick. So yeah, so for the meeting, we anticipate the meeting to be about 3 hours. And for the first hour, we were going to do a walking tour around the neighborhood. So the first part of the meeting is really it's kind of a warm-up exercise, really, to just be able to kind of have a dialogue with the community and really discuss the information that we've presented in past meetings so far. So what we have prepared for them is a supporting pamphlet, and their pamphlet has going here for the walking tour. So what we have is a supporting pamphlet with an annotated map of different stopping points throughout the neighborhood to discuss a lot of the issues that we've been discussing so far about infill and redevelopment within the neighborhood. And these pamphlets would have the supporting visual diagrams that we prepared so far, so the 3D renderings of the different types of development that the community could anticipate in the neighborhood. So we would stop at key points in the neighborhood where there'd be vacant properties and show, have a discussion around what's possible within the RL district, what's possible within the RM district, and begin to have that dialogue with the community members about, what can they anticipate under the current zoning. And in that pamphlet, they'll also have the questions that will be discussed in the community workshop, which is the second part of this community meeting. So it's really just, again, just a warm-up exercise for the community members before we dive into the community workshop to get them prepared. So in the community workshop, we'll have a brief overview. So Darcy will be presenting on a lot of the information that we presented so far, knowing that not everyone's attended a meeting. So just kind of getting everyone catch up to speed there. So the first part of the exercise is the original town vision. So it's kind of looking at original town at a higher level and asking the residents, what they want to preserve in their neighborhood, what they would want to preserve in the neighborhood, and what kind of public investments they would like to see throughout time. And this is going to be through a more of a engagement exercise that's led by the planning commissioners to help facilitate the conversation. And that's actually something that Darcy wanted to see what your availability was like, because we wanted to have the planning commissioners involved in the facilitation. So, Stephen, I didn't know if we could do a quick polling count of who would be available for that day.
I think that
You've done that, right?
This is for the 24th? Yeah.
Everyone,
Yep.
but sorry. Okay, cool. So yeah, so what we prepared is kind of a engaging exercise where, for the first part here, about what would you like to protect, preserve about original town to face of future growth, we would have a lot of different pictures trying to tease out what the real character of original town is. So the physical characteristics of original town, from its parks, from the existing housing stock. And from there, we would give people kind of it'll be a dotting exercise of pointing out specific parts of original town that people can really describe as what makes original town kind of unique to itself. And from there, people are able to identify distinct characteristics within original town that they want to preserve. And through that, we're able to have a dialogue and conversation. And the same with the public investments of, what type of investments would they like to see?
Before you go on, so one thing that came out of our last discussion was that word character was so subjective and ambiguous, and I'm wondering if using that and requesting definition of character is the right approach.
So yeah, I guess it's not really talking about the character, but different characteristics of the neighborhood itself. So really diving into just the housing stock to the improvements, the street improvements, and trying to describe what that character is. So it's not really just throwing out the general word of, the character of the neighborhood, but really teasing out what characteristics of the neighborhood make original town and what characteristics the residents wants to preserve and enhance in the future.
Yeah, so I would just suggest minimizing the use of the word character. I think characteristics is fine, that word's gotten bandied about so much, and it's lost. Well, it never really got a definition, right? So we're trying to understand what it is about the town that people like, right? And maybe that's the word character, but there are lots of other things that define it. So just being thoughtful about it is all. So.
Cool. And then part 2, housing characters, is looking specifically at the zoning districts and their perimeters. And this would be a similar exercise where we look at infill and redevelopment prototypes within other communities, similar to original town. And this is really going back to that questions that we asked in the meetings about, what key characteristics and features do you want to see within your neighborhood? So for example, in the RL district, we talked about ADUs, alley versus front-loaded garages, roof form, and wall plane articulation. So really looking at the building parameters that the zoning code guides and dictates, and really trying to understand what the community desires from those. So we would ask that for the RL district and RM district, and again, we'll have a supporting worksheet with all these different photo examples of, how can wall articulation be controlled, how can roof form be controlled. And after we have those part 1 and part 2 discussions, we'll do a group reporting. So each group will have the opportunity to just talk about areas of agreement and disagreement, and have a larger dialogue after coming back together. And then in the last part of our community meeting, Darcy is going to able to have a quick kind of recap on what our potential tools are. So if you remember from our different scenarios, we talked about the potential use of design guidelines and potential amendments to a zoning code. So knowing that there are different ways to approach kind of future growth and development in original town. And so after we highlight the different tools, we're able to have a bigger dialogue or a larger conversation about what kind of tools are preferred by the community. And from there, hopefully we can seek a consensus on the preferred direction on, what's really desired by the residents on the neighborhood, and also just the potential tools to help control some of that. So, so if you have any questions or comments, I'm here to answer them.
So, as part of part one, the walking tour, we're very lucky because it never rains on Tuesday nights. But if it does happen to be inclement weather, do you have a backup plan, photos of certain areas that you'll be able to present inside?
Yeah, we haven't really thought of a backup plan if it rains so far, but we do have enough materials where we can probably just have the discussion inside, knowing that all residents are pretty familiar with their neighborhood. We could probably name off certain cross sections of streets and talk about infill and redevelopment through to that diagrams. But yeah, that's definitely something we'll kind of think of and consider.
Do you have any idea how many people you expect on the walking tour?
We don't right now. Stephen?
No, the notices just went out, so. Yeah.
And I guess the question is, if we get 50, 60 people, are we breaking them up into 2 or 3 groups in the walking tour? Or?
No, for a walking tour, we figured we do it as a larger group together, but the breakout sessions in the community workshops will probably have groups of 8 or 10.
Okay.
If it's too big, we could break it up. I mean, just so that if you're carrying around 50 people, you don't want the people in the back not hearing and not engaging. So
yeah, I guess
we could consider it.
That's my only concern is if we're talking.
Okay. But I think part of this is trying to get feedback from you guys as to what level. I mean, one, you're all going to be here, and there'll be talking points to go over with part 2 of this exercise. But on part 1 of this exercise, everyone's going to be kind of mingling with whoever attends, and we'll want to have some questions and, be prepared with some questions just to start dialogue so that we can start people thinking about, this is something that has come up, or, the fact that the street doesn't have a sidewalk is, what do you think about that? Some people think that that's what makes original town, and others feel like there should be better connectivity. So that's, just an example of something that one could highlight or one could try to start a conversation on, but we'll see how many people we have.
And the outcome, I mean, in our last meeting, we talked about this process is probably going to need to continue on for Original Town, more discussions and different groups, or we hope, I mean, what's the goal of, I mean, we're trying to accomplish quite a bit in 2 hours. I still don't feel like we're going to get enough information or have enough involvement from enough people to make solid recommendations. I think we can start getting guidance, but help me out with the goal of this.
I think we're hopeful we get as much information as we can, because I think Clarion's still mindful of the original schedule and budget that was established for this exercise. So I think we'll see what happens on Tuesday night and then reassess if we have to reassess and ask for additional meetings, or we're not getting to the level of detail that we're looking to get to. Then we can discuss what the next step is.
Okay. And you have 2 hours, let's say you have 2 hours?
Yeah, so the 2 hours for the community workshop and then 1 hour for the walking tour.
So 3 hours total?
Yeah, 3 hours total.
All right.
2 hours for the discussion.
For the discussion here, that helps. Okay. And and that leaves enough time to get people down here, and you're going to wrap up the walking tour in enough time to get us down here for the 2 hour session. Is that the thought? Okay.
So that'd be like 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, yeah, the walking tour is from 5 to 6, and then the
Right.
community discussion is 6 to 8. Yep.
So that means the walking tour will need to be shorter so we can get people here and get them organized and sat
Mhm.
down into groups. So that's
Right.
going to take 15 minutes, right? I
Right.
mean, or 20 maybe.
The notification went out asking for people to show up 10 minutes early.
So we can get them there early. We'll just
Yep.
have to finish in enough
10
time
till
to
or
get down
something,
here.
yeah.
Will the room
Yep.
be set up for small group discussions, or what's
Well,
the thinking
yep.
of that?
Yep.
What that'll look like? Are we sitting up here, or are we?
Probably be at individual tables.
Well, okay, so we'll just scatter. We'll just scatter between the tables,
Yep.
and okay,
Yeah.
all right. And if this room is, if we do get lucky and get 75 people, what are we going to do? We're going to use a conference room and some
As
other
much as we
things, or-
can. The other piece I meant to tell you guys is that
Or unlucky,
construction
yeah.
starts next week too around here on bathrooms or something. So
Okay.
we'll work around what we're dealing with. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and we're also working to kind of prepare a facilitation guide for you guys to review. So that would be a tool that you guys could look at over.
Okay.
So
When will we have that?
end of day Monday. That's what we're shooting for. So
Okay.
just the night before or the day
Okay.
before. So
Hopefully the day before, so we
Yeah,
have the
no,
night
the
before to
day
look
before.
at it. But yeah.
And what was that you're going to have prepared for us?
just like a facilitation guide, just helping you understand what the materials are and how you can use them to help guide the conversations within your group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to have those before
Yeah.
end of workday, so we have the evening to look at it. Or it won't. I mean,
That'd be nice.
yeah. If I don't get it till Tuesday, I won't be able to even think
Mhm.
about it. So.
Okay.
So one other thing, I understand that we are trying to engage people in Original Town and have them involved in this process. But I just wanted to make sure that we're not excluding people from other parts of the community should they want to attend and participate in this. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's not
It's publicly
exclusive.
noticed,
It's a
right?
public, yeah. Yep.
We're not doing mailings to everybody in town, but like we did the original town neighborhood. But yeah, no, it's not exclusive, right?
It's not exclusive, and I think mailings went out to Original Town and Sagamore and Gold Creek Crossing. So
And then email, newsletter, or any kind of mailing, maybe from the.
the newsletter only goes out once a month, so we didn't catch the beginning of the month to get a newsletter out.
Could we
but
do a
we
separate-
could probably do a blast before
Yeah, could we
next
do a
week.
separate
Yep,
email
an
blast this
yep.
week and let the town know about the
Yep.
process? That would be
We
awesome.
could start a discussion on the CAC
Oh, boy.
bulletin board.
Yes.
Been awfully active.
No, yeah, and
Can
truly,
we
I
not
mean,
do that, please?
yeah, it's each of us. I mean, not say responsibility, but I mean, if you're interested in getting your social world connected into this, then reach out to those worlds.
Yeah, and if you guys want to do any canvassing, we can give
Yeah.
you some of those flyers, and you can go. Door
Yeah, I
to
would
door. You
like
mentioned
some.
that in
I
the past,
wouldn't mind
so-
walking around and just seeing if
Okay.
people. I don't know if I'll go knock on doors, but if people are out in their yards, I
Okay.
try to chat with them. So.
Would you have some of those flyers available here in your office? If I don't know exactly if my schedule would allow for me to do that, but if it does, I could swing through town hall and pick some up and go over and do
We'll
it.
have some printed, and if I need to print more, I'll print more. But I'll have some, and I'll leave them out at the information kind of
Okay.
desk next to Jody's desk. So.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's it for me.
Okay.
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next is the marketplace.
Cheney Bostic will present on the marketplace.
And can you pull up the slides? Or,
It's on there.
Okay.
If you, I think you probably want to
I
start
will
with
do it then.
If you go down, it's up. It just doesn't show it. So if you go down to the, yeah, and then the PDF. That the one you want?
Yeah, dim the light.
I think it's the
Is that one?
furthest. Yep.
There we go. Okay. So I am Cheney Bostic with Studio Seed and the Clarion team. My specific role on this project was to look at opportunities for the marketplace, the future of the marketplace. If you remember, I was here on June 26th at the Planning Commission meeting, and what we presented was sort of a synopsis of our public outreach and alternatives analysis that we've studied so far. And the reasoning behind that and the feedback that we got from the public. Just a quick reminder of the overall kind of guiding principles that we set for overall and the entirety of Northwest Superior was number one, and these are in no specific order, to leverage access to transit. 2, to promote a thriving marketplace district. 3, to improve multimodal access and manage congestion. 4, proactively plan for growth that complements Northwest Superior. And 5, to protect the character of original town. Now, some of those have to do more with the original town process, and some of them have more to do with the marketplace. But generally, those were our guiding principles set forth. For the marketplace, the 4 pillars that sort of build on that is we wanted to, no matter what alternative we looked at, we wanted to improve connectivity. Marshall Road is a beast for pedestrians and bicyclists, and so we wanted to address that. Leverage the BRT station. You've got about 1,000 riders a day that are driving now, most of them driving, parking in the lot, and then leaving. So might we start to create more improved connectivity so people could bike or walk to the station instead, and then have something to do when they're there waiting on the bus. Number 2, improve the long-term success of the center, knowing that the big boxes, Target, Costco, et cetera, are, big money drivers for the town, and they are part of the success and the financial success of the town. We don't want to do anything that would take away from or make those less attractive. So keep them successful, the big boxes. However, the smaller pad sites in the center are underperforming generally, and so we want to try to boost those in different ways with placemaking and additional uses that complement them. Number 3, improve the experience. So right now, it very much operates like a shopping center, and if you remember from the market study, regional, national trends are changing in the way we shop, lots of it happening online. And if you do go to a center, lots of the time we're looking for experience, right? Somewhere to sit outside, maybe listen to music, have, on a lawn. So we call that, as urban designers, placemaking, creating more outdoor dining and plazas and events that can happen. And then improving the identity is the 4th pillar that we looked at for the marketplace. And really what we mean by that is, right now, today, it's experienced as, again, a big shopping center, but it's very spread out. You're not likely to park once and then walk to 2 different stores. You're going to get in your car and drive around. So we wanted to look at the opportunity of kind of creating little nodes or neighborhoods, if you will, within the center. So last time I was here, we presented 3 alternatives that we looked at and presented to the community, and through the online and public meetings, we got feedback on those. And before going to the town board, we wanted to check in with you all once again to let you know, make this a transparent process, but also with your guidance, get some direction. And so what we're here today to look at is sort of our preferred alternative direction, the direction that we're leaning in terms of our recommendations for the future marketplace. And specifically, we asked to model or from a broad perspective, really look at the transportation. That was one of the concerns from the community. If we are adding in new uses, what is that going to do to the transportation? It's already congested. What's going to happen? So we want to have Alex and his team look at some of the implications for that. So we will give him projections on number of housing units and general retail additions of square footage, and then he can kind of take that at a high level and say, this is going to generate this amount of trips, and these changes to the infrastructure are good, bad, medium, don't care. So first is the existing conditions, just as a base to start with. And then option 1, we're calling a modified existing. This is something we think would be useful to study because it is an option that has it's more of a light touch. So what it's doing from big big picture is creating 2 new access points into the marketplace. So instead of Marshall Road being the only access point into and out of the center, we looked at providing punching through a right in, right out, which means you can only go right in and you can only go right out. You wouldn't have the opportunity to cross the median and go left here, but it allows that additional opportunity to enter the center to Whole Foods. And then another one we want to look at is a potential punching through in between Michael's and TJ Maxx, just to give yet another outlet and relieve some of the traffic on Marshall Road. And then in terms of land use, one of the big ideas that came from the community feedback and the alternatives that we looked at before was this idea of a, for lack of better term, marketplace green. And so we placed that right around the transit station, creating a plaza and green. If you remember, one of our case studies was the Village at the Peaks in Longmont, and they have a very similar green with retail shops around that. And we had a anecdotal case study from one of the retailers here in the marketplace that also has a business there, that she said, our business does so much better there. There's always events and there's kids and there's things happening. So same idea, that we're trying to create a place around the transit station, kind of a main street along Center Drive, but relieve a little bit of the congestion along Marshall by punching through two additional access points. So from a transportation standpoint, we want to test that and see, is it going to help and by how much? And we might stop there. Another idea that came out of this process was the concept of rerouting Marshall Road. Now, it sounds like a big move, but this was an idea that came from, really Marshall Road is this big, traffic spine that takes people to those big boxes. And so the idea was, what if, but the downside of Marshall Road being that beast is that the rest of the center lacks place or, pedestrian scale. It doesn't feel safe. So, and it's hard to cross. So we recommended a reroute option of Marshall Road, using the existing right-of-way, just expanding Fifth there. So you're still using a common travel way that people use to get to the center, but we're pushing Marshall Road closer to those big boxes to where the traffic already is, and then creating a connection from Original Town along 4th Avenue and having that come up and meet Center Drive to really create what we call our 100% corner. So something is happening there, it's active, it looks like more like a downtown. And that would allow for the same types of land uses and marketplace green, just a reconfiguration of the circulation. And we see some pluses to that.
Just so you don't lose them.
Oh, okay. And we see some pluses for this from a land use perspective and placemaking around the transit center. And yeah.
Quick question. So, I mean, that area around that circle that you put in by the PetSmart, there's a pretty significant elevation gain there. And can we even accomplish? I mean, you've got buildings there, and you're going up a long way. Just wondering how, I mean, I hear you, it could be, and the reroute would be kind of neat. I'm just wondering if that elevation gain makes for a very difficult project or even a feasible project.
That's something we will study in this next phase, but here's the existing route, just so you can see. And are you talking about the grade change?
Yeah, like where that
here?
Arby's is and where PetSmart is. I mean, you come off of Sycamore and you go, it's just about halfway up PetSmart, zoop, you shoot up, I don't know, 10 feet.
Oh, at least where that
15
new Asian
maybe.
restaurant is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Up to the.
And then Buffalo Wild Wings is up on that plateau, and everything else is up on that plateau. So I just wonder, if it's bigger than we're thinking it might be. And,
A lot of things we have to test.
Yeah, and just see. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Detention pond.
Yeah. And yes, got
the
that too.
detention ponds are also located. Yes, that's a big infrastructure cost, and we would need to relocate those. But we tried to miss those for the most part.
Okay.
and locate them so that because of the detention, there is the opportunity for an underpass, for a ped bike underpass. So that's a positive to that.
Okay.
And then, so we passed these alternatives by Alex, and he recommended that we look at one more, which is generally the same. We're calling this a modified Marshall reroute. So generally, you still have the Marshall reroute coming through. We lined 4th up to line more directly with the existing 4th, and then tied Sycamore Street around. So trying to create more of a street grid within there. Again, you can see the existing alignment of existing Marshall, and so you know, there are some pros and cons to weigh, and that's what I want to go through next, is just to help facilitate this discussion and where we go next, to present some of the pros and cons. And so on option 1, the modified existing, where we keep the same alignment of Marshall Road, but I don't think I mentioned that we would recommend still skinning that down to be more pedestrian scaled. There's a lot of wasted space there, some striping in the center that are, you know, kind of like 15 feet wide. It's, you know, just empty space. So option 1, modified existing, the pros are that there is no major infrastructure changes, which would be less disruptive, less costly. It utilizes the existing land parcels that are already there. The development at the transit station could begin immediately. That's with all of these options. So that is a constant there. And the marketplace green also is a positive with all of these options. The cons is that Marshall Road still probably seen as a barrier. The center still lacks identity in neighborhoods. You know, you're still bisecting it with a big road. And the bike network is not really direct and intuitive. So option number 2, Marshall reroute. The pros utilizes existing right-of-ways and land parcels. So with the reroute option of 4th, with the minor leg coming through, we are utilizing the same right-of-way as existing Marshall. It's you know, and then 5th becomes a Marshall, basically. You look confused, is that? I can go back and show you what I mean by that. Marshall is located where the majority of the traffic is and needs to go with the reroute option, and that is constant between option 1, 2, and 3. Which provides a more pedestrian-oriented core. The bike network is connected and intuitive, and it really starts to establish those neighborhoods that we talked about. The cons are that, you know, again, Marshall still could be seen as a barrier. There are opportunities, though, in both option 2 and 3 to, as we talked about with the grade change, to do an underpass for a safe pedestrian bike connection. And then there are minor modifications to the middle 2 detention areas with that. And then option number 3, along with everything listed in bold here on option 2, the additional pros is that it opens up new land for redevelopment. So with the vacating of the existing Marshall right-of-way, that could be used for development. And the underpass provides a safe and direct bike and ped connection. The cons potentially are that the new land parcels would need to be reconfigured. So with the vacating of existing Marshall, it kind of creates new land patterns, if you will, and that the far north detention would need to be relocated from an infrastructure standpoint. So I think where we want to go from here is really to arrive, you know, what we talked about last time is let's study from a transportation perspective the benefits, again, look at pros and cons of kind of a modified existing, because you still, I think there is opportunity to create a place there at the transit center and deal with Marshall, you know, and just stop there. But let's also be bold and look at some more opportunities, because this, you know, we're looking at potentially the next 50 years of the center, and it's not going to operate the same as it does today in 50 years. So let's think a little bit more boldly about that. So I think, you know, studying one of these two or maybe a blending of them and looking at the topo, looking at the traffic projections, looking at, you know, constraints and benefits of these would be useful. So that is where we are currently, and our schedule projects board presentation on early August 13th, maybe 21st. So coming back to the town board with a preferred recommendation on the 21st, after we do some of this traffic modeling.
Couple comments. So we do, you talk a lot about bike and pedestrian connectivity, but the 36 bikeway, which we have approval to work on, isn't really included in this. I think that would be advantageous if we can get it at least on there and be thoughtful about, okay, if we do this, we now have a bikeway coming down, and how does it connect? And
Are you
can
talking
it- is
the
it-
36 bikeway up here?
Yeah, we're adding to it along Marshall Road. There's an approved plan
Oh, okay.
from the tunnel all the way down here to McCaslin, right? Is that supposed to happen this year, I thought?
It's so basically from 76th Street to where 4th Street is shown, and then it ties
Oh, it doesn't
in.
go all the way to the
Alex
tunnel?
can show
It goes
you
up to the
exact-
tunnel, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it's not on Marshall so much. It's on the north side of Marshall.
Yeah.
Alex
near the
Arnello, Public Works Director. Yeah, we're building this. We're about to actually go out to bid, and one
Yeah.
of the things we did do, we acquired an easement through this property, so we're bringing it right into the BRT station.
Nice.
We don't know what happens there because,
Yeah.
but we think we can maybe do some striping to be able to connect it. But obviously, that's an issue. Like we
Sure.
have over in Louisville, you bring bikes in and you have everybody crossing your bike path. So we are getting it right into the BRT station. It's just yet to be determined how do we, you know, connect to the marketplace itself, what kind of crossing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That should be part of this process, especially if we're talking
Right.
about bikes and peds. If we could
And-
get that
Yeah, it is.
drawn in here so that we're at least thinking about it.
It's not colored, but it is on there. It's
Okay,
just
or labeled or something, so.
labeled, yep.
And then I also wondered, so going behind, I've just walked back there a couple of times, and I know the bike path is kind of back there behind Sports Authority and Whole Foods. There's no opportunity there to get a road, and just thinking, you know, just again, another road that gives us an access point, and that's probably too close to McCaslin, isn't it?
On
to do-
McCaslin or on Marshall?
No, right, just, yes, yeah, like right in there and back behind. But that's probably too close to McCaslin to be thinking. I was just sort of thinking about additional connectivity
Right.
back through there.
I wanted your feedback, and we were just thinking about this in the last week or so about a pedestrian underpass, because we get a lot of complaints from Original Superior and Coal Creek Crossing about wanting to get to the BRT station, get to Panera and so forth.
Yeah, it's just a little
And
dangerous.
this intersection is really problematic to get pedestrians across. There's so many turning movements there. We have a long cycle length and so forth. And trying to get it, you know, maybe an underpass through here someplace, I think this is the logical place to go, but obviously there's some real issues with how do you do that. We have some great changes here, but, you know, the people, if you go down on this side, you're not really crossing any roads up here. If you go up here, then you have to cross Sycamore, so we have some issues there. So we're kind of just toying around with the idea, can we get an underpass in here to really improve the connectivity and not having to cross that wide, you know, street of Marshall. In terms of traffic volumes, you know, the volumes drop off significantly as you, you know, proceed. We have about 24,000 vehicles per day on Marshall right here, the heaviest stretch. We lose about 10,000 at Sycamore, so you have about 14,000 in this area. You go down to about, you know, 8,000 or so. Once you get past 76, we have about 6,000. So I think it's possible, even with a two-lane, to do something like this, to bring Marshall in here and not to have that direct connection, get them through, at least here with a two-lane road, and maybe split some of the traffic. So the volume drops off significantly once you get past Sycamore. So some things we can do, and I was just playing around here to maybe we can get another, pad site in this area here if you eliminated that quick shot. Why are we bringing people so straight shot right into center? Maybe slow them down. So we're just toying with some ideas what would work, but a lot of these things are pretty expensive when you look at drainage and so forth, and then the grades. But an underpass, I think, would be a nice thing to have from pedestrian connectivity.
Okay.
What about, Alex, what about an overpass?
Well, overpasses normally are not used very well by pedestrians because you got to go up higher. You got to go up 15 or 16 feet up. With an underpass, you only have to go down 8 to 10 feet. And even with a bike, you go down and you get momentum to come back up. Now, if you had some buildings that you can use the buildings, go up into buildings or plazas for the overpass, that may make some sense. So it's just a matter of how the land use is developed. But normally, underpasses are much more feasible, much more used by pedestrians and bicyclists than overpasses.
Okay.
I apologize, I'm going to have to slip out. Can I turn this over to you, Jerry, to adjourn? And
Sure, Commissioner.
And in general, this looks great, and I like that we're exploring all three options, but I do have to slip out and run to the airport. I apologize.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you, Commissioner McCool. Chairman. Frankly, if we're going to step into some comment here, I like this option 3 actually the best. And going back to what we were just discussing about pedestrian and cyclist connectivity, I think that should really lead the charge of this, because I can imagine the residents in Coal Creek and Sangamore wanting to be able to safely access where Panera is and then safely access back over to the BRT. That's a fundamental aspect of all of this change, is the pedestrian and cyclist connectivity. Right. And then how that connects into Original Town and then across into the downtown Superior. Right, and also all these big boxes, this is all your auto-oriented development. People are driving here, they're parking, whereas here we can make this more walkable. People are living here, get them in. This is a more walkable pedestrian scale environment where this is all the auto-oriented. And so by moving this over, we try to, bracket that and get more room for that, walkable type of land uses. I think it's a great idea.
So would there be a significant cost difference between option 2 and option 3?
We haven't gotten that far, but there probably are a number of things that could be, well, as we go farther, I think that's going to be a big determining factor on how much it's all going to cost and what benefits you're going to get for that significant cost.
And one of the big things I think to keep in mind, and it's illustrated through Cheney's colors, but like from the existing conditions to what's proposed, all the blue is shown now as public streets. And we really only have Marshall Road. So the existing condition shows what is currently public road, which is Sycamore to a certain point, and then Marshall Road all the way through. So Center Drive and Fifth Avenue, we don't control. But we're hearing from the public that the connectivity is a major thing. So if we were to make these areas public right-of-ways, then we are now in control of those like public improvements, the sidewalks, the connections. We have a lot more opportunity to make this a more walkable, more pedestrian-friendly, and more connected, just with them being public right-of-ways. But that's also an additional expense, so that'll be part of that analysis as well. And the same, I guess, to that same, kind of along those same lines, the possibility of rerouting Marshall probably comes with us assuming the responsibility of Marshall as well from CDOT. So that'll be another cost to kind of consider. But I don't know that the maintenance of a roadway is something that, would preclude. I don't know that CDOT's like tied to maintaining and paying for the improvements of Marshall Road. From what I understand, typically where, their right-of-ways go through town areas, they're, amenable to handing over those costs. So that's something
And-
else that we'll continue to
That's
look into.
a process called devolution, and we would, look at, where did my pointer go? Doing that from 76th to McCaslin, and there is a payout that CDOT does for that, for deferred maintenance to the town, so there would be a lump sum of money that could help fund some of the improvements.
Excellent.
But at this
Commissioners?
point, it would be hard for us to come to a consensus about what we want to do, not having any idea of what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
And what the expense is going to be to taxpayers, versus what we can get from development or grants, I guess they are, or things like that.
That's right. So we are still, we're not asking for any consensus per se or direction tonight. We're just allowing you to see where we are in the process, and if you agree, we'll keep going with studying the transportation implications and cost, and come back with that information.
Yeah, I think we'd like to hear, if somebody has a knee-jerk reaction to, option 3, which is possibly the most expensive one, that seems, too far, or if option 1 seems too light. So if you guys have any, general direction on that, that would be good to relate now. And if the public has any comment on that, that's, what we're here to listen to as well.
So Cheney, thank you very much. I think we all like the direction this is going. I think in my opinion, that option 1 is too light. That's not enough. I like the new entrance right off of Marshall down there. Yep, the right in, right out to get you right into Whole Foods, like you were talking about. How that could be a node, and then the area on the other side of Center Drive could be another node, and I think that would be a huge benefit, and it would draw people there and keep people there. But I think option 1 is not enough. I think we got to move Marshall closer to the big box stores, and like in option 3. If any of the commissioners.
So as we move forward, I mean, one of the things we've talked about in the past and discussed is low-hanging fruit, if you will. It looks to me, and it seems like some of these right-in, right-outs could be attainable pretty quickly, and really without significant cost. I really don't know what it costs to make an entrance right-in, right-out, but I'm sure it's significantly less than rerouting Marshall Road, just to give some kind of immediate relief and connectivity to some of these stores that are off Marshall Road that don't have easy access.
That's right.
That's a good point, Commissioner Stewart. Because everyone comes in Marshall Road and takes that right just around Panera to get to Whole Foods or the dentist or the Verizon store that's in there now. We could disperse some of the traffic load to that new entrance. I don't know how sooner than later we could do that, but.
And I will point out that we thought about phasing and all of this too. That was part of our considerations in the last presentation, but for just simplicity, I've shown, and nothing precludes, those from happening right away, and the RTD land, as you see, that stays the same in all of these. So, there are definitely some low-hanging fruit that could start moving, and then, think bigger long term.
Yeah, I agree on I think the first option is, very, it's something that should be studied, figure out what the cost would be, but I agree that, we're looking at this for the long term, and I think that relocating Marshall is probably our best option for long term, and I don't want to get stuck by looking at it and just saying, let's just stick to the simplest because it'll be the least intrusive on, the public up front, and it'll help in the short term, but then, and Planning Commission will be sitting here in 15 years, wondering why we didn't go big, because now a decision has to be made. So I really like pushing the limits and see where that takes us. So I like that design, or option number 3 as well.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I agree with you. I think that we need to be planning for the future, especially if we're going to be kind of expending, this kind of money. And I think we need to make it where it has a long-term use, and that there's some good future development possibilities. However, I can hear my neighbors saying, why did you guys do this? This is, $20 million or whatever. I don't think we even have an idea, what it'll cost, and why did we do that now? Because it's impacting us now, and let them worry about that 15 years later, or 15 years from now. But I do agree. I think that the option, either option 2 or option 3 would be best for the redevelopment of that. And I like both of them. I think you've done a great job. And I really like how Marshall Road is rerouted, because I think not only does it give you some more access to those stores, I think it'll also have a calming effect on traffic as well. So that's kind of what is where I am.
Just one comment, in terms of phasing on, option 3, this is fairly low cost here, and this is pretty, low cost, and we're creating, a significant pad there. So, I mean, phasing, you could do this pretty simply. This, I don't know how much it's really buying you. So, but I think here, we get the high-speed traffic, that's coming through. Let's lower that speed sooner.
Yeah.
And then get something going here that, really supports, complements what's going to go over there. So that portion there is pretty doable, I think. Getting the underpass is significant how we do that, but this could be, fairly, not easy to develop, but I mean, fairly cost effective there.
Thank you. Do you have anything else for us, Jane?
I do not.
Would any members of the public, residents that are here tonight, like to speak and share a comment? Please come up to the microphone, state your name and address.
David Harper, 104 6th Avenue in Coal Creek Crossing. I just wanted to say that I agree that I think options 2 and options 3 are terrific. I think the opportunity to move that street, Marshall, closer to where people are going so that they can park there and leave the space to the east open more for bicyclists and pedestrians is great. So I congratulate, I'm sorry, I'm slipping your name.
Cheney.
I'd like to congratulate Janie and her colleagues on coming up with what I think is a really creative solution. I do think we need the underpass. It's not shown in option 2, but I do think we need the underpass, because I figure every time I walk from home to Panera Bread, there's a finite chance that I'm not going to make it across Marshall Drive. Because, as Eric said, there are so many different lights, and half the motorists using them don't really know which way the pedestrian lights go. So I think that's really important. But overall, and the other thing I'm concerned about is the right. I'd be concerned about this right in, right out, because I think it's rather close to McCaslin, and at busy times of day, the volume of traffic going down that way, people come down McCaslin and accelerate along Marshall Drive, and I'm concerned that they would actually, if you want to turn right there on a sort of right angle thing, you're going to have people slowing down here, so you'll be backing the traffic up onto Marshall Drive. But that's my only, that's my major concern about that. Otherwise, I think it's a great plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to, so there would be a dedicated right turn there. There already is one? Okay, so that would remain, but.
I think what Cheney's saying is that they have to turn at that intersection. You have a right lane turn and terminate. You wouldn't have a choice to go through to the next intersection at Sycamore. That's,
right, yeah.
So. Well, then they shop here, yeah?
Well, and you've got a side, I mean, you're cutting across the sidewalk that goes there then too, right?
Sure. Yeah, no, you're right.
Please.
My name is Claire Dixon, and I live at 1860 Vernon Lane. My husband and I also own a business in the Superior Marketplace. And I just have a list of some questions and some comments. So as a business owner in this area, one thing that I'm confused about is, has Brixmor been brought into these discussions at all, or where are they? Have they been looped in? Because it looks like we're kind of taking down some of the buildings that they own. So I'm wondering how that works. Do they need, their permission really to take down some buildings? And then of course what that would mean for the existing business owners if their spaces go away. What would happen to those? I know a dental office in particular is not that cheap to rebuild. There's a lot of things that you have to have water lines and some considerations for x-rays and things like that. So that's a question that I have. I think the town has done a really great job of outreach regarding this community center, and I would really hope to see a lot more community outreach regarding these plans. Particularly, I think we need to prioritize the people who do own businesses here, since this does make a major impact on a lot of locally owned businesses. So I attended the outreach meeting last night, and I think that type of event would be appropriate for this kind of thing, to invite residents and particularly the business owners here to get a little more feedback. I really liked what was said about plazas and outdoor dining and experiences and pedestrian friendly. I just don't see it on the plans. So I think I would like to see a plan that shows where those plazas would be, and really what those little neighborhoods would be. I am also a member of the Town Cultural Arts and Public Spaces Committee, and we've discussed that a lot, kind of the placemaking and ways to bring people in. And we really like the idea of plazas, so I'd really like to explore that more and see exactly how that would play out in these plans. And another thing, just to put that out there, on our committee, we've really talked about how we can incorporate more cultural venues into the town as an economic strategy, as a way to bring people in. I know they talked a lot about experiences, people, really not being drawn so much to retail anymore, but coming out to have different experiences, concerts and farmers markets and things like that. So it might be nice to see how we can incorporate some of those things into this plan to make it kind of a fun place for people just to come and hang out. Another thing to bring up is that something that we are pursuing on the CAPS committee is creating an arts and historical district around Original Town to preserve some of the history there. We're going to be requesting some funds for a consultant to kind of pursue that. We did bring that up at our annual dinner with the town board, and they did encourage us to go ahead and pursue that. But sometimes I feel like we're kind of moving on a parallel track, and I think that we need to kind of have some communication, since there's kind of different planning going on for these areas. And I think that's it. I guess just my main question is, how do we handle the fact that some existing businesses kind of go away in these plans? So what's the plan for that? Also, it looks like there's really a lot of housing planned here. Just as a resident, I don't love the idea of lots of high-density living space. I think maybe we do need some, particularly around the transportation areas, but I think that might make it kind of intimidating for current residents to come down here if it feels like there's a lot of tall, high-density housing down there. It might not feel as welcoming. So Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. I would default to the town staff for the
I'm
property owner.
I'm happy to respond. Good questions, and I do apologize. We've done better in the past couple presentations. This is kind of like we're pulling back and mostly looking at transportation and circulation. But Cheney has made it abundantly clear through all of the previous presentations that, you know, we're not trying to move buildings around necessarily. We're trying to work with the existing infrastructure as much as we can. One of the things that we've heard from the public is that, and I think one of what's come out of this exercise, one of the lessons is that I think that we have probably a reasonable amount of retail out in this area. The problem with it is that it's all dispersed. And so if we were able to help, you know, kind of create a center around this area, especially on the eastern portion of it, we would, you know, all of those things would function better. They would thrive off of each other. So I don't know that, and we have like this sliding scale of kind of densities for both housing and for additional office space and for additional retail in general. And so we've looked at, you know, kind of the lower end scales to the higher end scales, and we haven't really arrived at anything. We're just kind of working through options and trying to get feedback. But to your first question, Brixmor has been contacted. We've tried to get them to be more engaged in this process. They're currently not terribly interested in doing too much, and we understand that the difficulties that are out there, and we're trying to find some solutions. And I think the other thing about this is to think about it as a visioning exercise. We're not anywhere near going to knock down a building or move a building, but we're trying to figure out what new vision and new opportunity. So we just have a plan for this area that would allow it. Right now, we don't have too much more development opportunity in this area. We don't have, we have residential use, but only through special use review. So we just have obstacles. So if we remove some of those obstacles and have a vision for, you know, being able to reroute traffic at least, we would put the center in a better place to succeed long term. That's kind of the thought. I'll let Cheney respond to, but.
Yep.
And also, I'd just like to jump in there that, Claire, thank you for your comments, because the business community is a large reason why we're looking at reconfiguring all this, is to bring more people into this area and have the businesses be more successful, and then look forward at future growth with the BRT coming in. And how do we handle that? How do we handle it safely to get our residents across to Panera? I mean, it's a simple thing like that. The gentleman, David, shouldn't be concerned about his life crossing Marshall Road. So, Cheney.
Yeah, so about the replacement in our numbers, initially we did crunch some numbers about numbers of units, and we always said replacement retail. So there are, in some of these scenarios, a couple of the pad sites would, you know, have to be relocated because of infrastructure or what, you know, these improvements. But there absolutely would be a plan in place once the developer comes on board. Like Steven said, this is, you know, high visioning, but once there is a developer on board, there would be a plan, you know, hopefully to replace those retail so they could remain in place while their new facility is being constructed, and then move into that when, before it gets demolished. It's not, you know, I don't want to come across that we're blowing through here.
Move anybody out. We want to retain, and we're trying to make. So that's part of the you know, the difficulty with this type of exercise too, is just to, you know, and I think, you know, on a large scale we've gotten some good ideas. You know, like, you know, bringing the traffic closer to the big box stores that want auto-oriented traffic, and then making the area on the east more walkable and more pedestrian friendly. That's what those smaller line retail stores need to succeed more and to have less turnover, whereas the big box stores need to keep the traffic. So we're trying to balance all of these alternatives, or all these objectives, I guess is what I should say. And I think that overall, you know, the site has been built for the big boxes, and we're trying to make it more friendly to the smaller inline stores and the mix of uses that would eventually allow for a plaza area and you know, a more vibrant development for you know, events and cultural activities and stuff that you've also mentioned.
And I like your comments about, you know, being able to see where those public spaces would be, and that we will certainly get there as part of this project.
Have any other public comment, please?
And we should keep in mind that this is public comment and not question and answer.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. Thank you, Commissioner
Well, there goes
Stewart.
mine, no. Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce. Just want to remind you that obviously the Chamber works very closely with your town staff, and I think Stephen knows very well that any outreach, and definitely I will make a point, Claire and I will meet to communicate any further messaging that you have. I fully agree with Claire's point, as you know, the more outreach we can do, the better, and we're always trying to do that, and obviously town staff does a great job of that. But anything we can go above and beyond, the chamber is here to help, and obviously that's why I'm here tonight. And then just one note, and I think I've asked Alex this a few times, is have we thought about an only right into that new node at Whole Foods, if that were to come about, only right in, and then we would exit at other points from the property, and then love the idea of the second node onto 76. So just thinking about more safely, crossing as a pedestrian, things like that, is a right in possible.
Thank you. We have any other public comment? Cheney?
That is it.
That is it.
I think I might have the wrong schedule in mind. Can you update them on when we'll be back?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is what I have, at least, was our
Okay.
normal research.
Okay, so our current schedule shows that we will be back on August 7th, assuming all of our analysis, traffic analysis and everything goes to plan, with an update.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Cheney.
Stephen, do we have anything else?
No more announcements from staff, no.
Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is a adjournment. Gonna close it up?
Excellent.